Welcome back to Trailgating, day 5, Saturday night here at the 2024 UTMB presented by HOKA. My name is Dylan Bowman, and we are here with the UTMB Instant Reaction Show, and I'm joined in studio by very special guest, Mr. Topher Gaylord, immediately to my right. Topher, how are you doing, buddy?
What a week. I'm doing awesome, but I'm feeling it now. What a week.
You do this once a week, 21 years in a row. Like, my goodness, we forget how amazing and exhausting it is when we
Keeps
come back.
getting better every year.
Amazing. We'll talk all about it. Next to you, of course, your lovely wife, Kim Gaylord. Kim, how are you doing this evening?
We are great. We're on the UTMB high here.
Yeah, yes, we are. We're going to talk all about everything that evolved here over the last 36 hours or whatever since the beginning of CCC on Friday morning. We're currently recording at 7:30 p.m. local time here in Chamonix, France. We are expecting to see the back half of the women's top 10 finish while we're recording, so we'll do some live updates as those progress. Before we get to it, a big thank you to HOKA for making our coverage possible here all week. Go get yourself a pair of those Tecton X3s at HOKA.com. That shoe brought home, I think, 4 podiums this weekend, and the dude who helped to create it, Mr. Vincent Bouillard,
amazing,
secures a victory here at UTMB. We'll talk about that in a second, but go to HOKA.com. Make sure you peruse their amazing lineup of trail products. Kim and Toph, get us started. We're not going to do the deep background. We don't need to set any context, but you guys have been here since the very beginning of UTMB. There's nobody better to get an assessment as to how 2024 sets up against all previous years. So maybe just top line reactions from both of you as we close down another amazing edition.
I mean, this is the week of the year for trail running globally and in Europe. I mean, it's iconic. It's just a reminder that trail running is a mainstream sport in Europe. Like, this is not a tertiary sport. It's not a niche sport. It's a mainstream sport, and you feel it. Like, 2,000 years of mountain culture comes to life during UTMB week, and you have people in their homes coming out. You know, one of our favorite spots on the UTMB night on Friday night is Notre Dame. And we always gauge the energy level of the community off of Notre Dame. And it was off the Richter last night. I mean, there were chainsaws, flares, horns. I mean, there were a group of teenagers that were probably Nordic ski racers and trail runners that had set up the coolest sort of techno DJ vibe tunnel that I've ever seen, and they were just electrifying the runners. So, it's been a great week, and I think the energy here is as good as I've ever seen it. In the people in the communities are as passionate about UTMB week as I've ever seen them.
Kim?
Yeah, and I just think the levels of the races here and the quality of the athletes, you know, the crescendo from the OCC to the CCC to the UTMB is just, the fields are incredibly deep. Athlete teams are bringing huge lineups. What stands out to me, I feel like the Terex team brought A-star athletes that did well. And then, of course, HOKA does an incredible job here with brand activation and just getting behind an event. I mean, you just really feel the HOKA presence. And then, of course, their athletes in performances and the results.
What an incredible weekend. Let's jump directly into it. I've got 7 topics for us to tick through here, and we have to start in the obvious place. Vincent Bouillard shocks the world. What an incredible story, okay? And this is something that we talked about this week. In fact, when I was chatting with Ludo in our pre-race interview, I asked him, hey, say a few words about Vincent, because a few of us think of him as a dark horse. And Ludo was like, you know, of course, being humble, but yeah, I tried to train with Vincent the last few weeks since Hardwreck, but he's too fast for me. He's too fast for me. He works at HOKA, but he's too fast for me. And we ID'd him as a dark horse. We sort of blew up his spot a little bit, but you know, still, the fact is almost nobody knew who he is coming into the race, and he won.
I mean,
in the third fastest time ever.
Yeah, one of the fastest times ever, sub 20. He's a product manager, right? A product manager at HOKA, and he beat the entire athlete roster at HOKA. I mean, it's incredible.
Okay, so Vincent Bouillard is the senior manager of product engineering and business development at HOKA. Like I said,
that's a big job.
Big job. And he's been there since before HOKA was cool, before HOKA was HOKA. I think he's been there 8 or 10 years.
Right.
So he's been integral to their success in creating the products that have been so successful at this race in particular, but in trail running more generally. And here he is, shocking the world, winning the race as an employee of HOKA. I have a couple of things I want to share here. This comes straight from the HOKA team, who's also staying in the same place where we are. Yeah, he's been at HOKA for 8 years, starting as an intern in 2016. He's a French native who resides in Annecy now. I met him actually in Portland when he was living there working out of the Decker's office. It's a funny story too, because I was running along Skyline Boulevard, connecting 2 trails, and all of a sudden a guy rides past me on a bicycle. And of course I'm, blasting a podcast in my ears. He slows down and rides up next to me. I'm like, who's this guy? Turn off my podcast. He introduces himself. Turns out it's Vincent Bouillard. Then he wins Gorge Waterfalls 100K in 2022, the classic Gorge Waterfalls to UTMB championship. But I think it should be said that he's one of these types of athletes who everybody who knows him is like, this guy is very good. He just doesn't really race very often. But when he does, he's on point, and what a stage to be on point and shock the world.
I mean, he had an incredible race. I mean, I guess it's a sign that HOKA's product team and their entire organization is stacked with athletes. I mean, co-founder Nico Mermu was a podium finisher at UTMB, and now you got a senior product manager that I guess he's going to have to go work for sponsorship now, or maybe he'll get a separate athlete deal. I don't know, but he had an incredibly tactical and very, very, very good race.
Yeah, he had it in control the whole time. I don't think I mentioned this, but this is something Chris Hollis mentioned to me. As it relates to the Tecton franchise specifically, he said there were 157 variations of the shoe that they prototyped, and that Vincent personally tested almost every single one of them. So he truly was one of the critical pieces in bringing the product to life, that he wore on his own feet, that won UTMB last year, that won Western States this year, and he won again in it.
Incredible.
Unbelievable.
That's insane.
The brand living the sport. Tony, can you pull up this amazing graphic for our audience here? This was shared to us by our friend Keith Byrne. Not sure how he found it, but he shared it in our group chat today. So for those who are just listening, it's basically Vincent Bouillard's out of office notification on his HOKA email address.
And what does it say?
It says, I am currently traveling with limited access to my emails. Please allow for additional delay in my responses for any urgent matter, yada, 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 yada.
I mean, it also just shows it doesn't say I'm out of the office running the UTMB. He's obviously so modest, not showy at all.
Yes, it's absolutely perfect. Also, he has a private Instagram account with 263 followers on it.
I'm jumping on that.
Never posted once.
I love it. And apparently I heard he's great friends with Jim and Jess, right? And sort of he and his partner and Jim and Jess are just great
tight
friends.
Yep. Yeah. And I think I can't wait. I hope he can come into studio tomorrow, because I really want to talk to him about their relationship, because I know Vincent attended Jim's wedding in Colorado, and I know Jim, after UTMB just last year, attended Vincent's and Camila's wedding here in Europe. They moved back to Annecy this year. They're back settled in France. Camila actually works at Salomon now here in Annecy, but no longer is he under the radar. He won the Kodiak 100 miler last fall. I went and looked at the result there. He won by 2 hours in his first 100 miler. Now wins UTMB in his second 100 miler.
Silent Slayer.
Makes you wonder what the hell's next for this guy, It's a mystery.
He's going to maybe just want to be on the athlete team and run around the world.
It's kind of a conundrum, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Good for him. I mean, he really did execute incredibly well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge result.
Okay. Well, let's move on from that so we can keep the show moving. But again, I'm hoping to get Vince on in studio tomorrow. We can share a little bit more of his story, get to know him a little bit better, because I'm sure there's thousands of people around the world desperate to learn a bit more, myself included. Moving on, of course, the second bullet point we got to hit in this instant reaction podcast, Katie Schide, my God. Her second win here, now course record. You guys are very tight with Katie. I'm sure, I don't know if you've had a chance to catch up with her. I'm sure you haven't, but you were out and about. You witnessed her performance. You crewed her personally at Western States, where she had another stunning run. Comments on Katie?
Yeah, I mean, she's just incredible. She's the ultimate in the sport right now, just all in, super focused, super into her training. And I would say one thing, we actually haven't been in touch with her too much after Western States, but one thing I noticed, and I'm sure a lot of people notice, is how she sort of went dark after her Western States performance. And, you know, she had registered for UTMB. I think she even noted, I bought the cancellation insurance just in case, not knowing, but I think she had planned to try to do Western States UTMB, but one step at a time. And with UTMB training after Western States, she didn't really put it out on Strava. She went a little bit quieter this time. So I'm sure she put some serious vert in. She had the leg speed, and I think she just has shown to herself her confidence to perform and execute. I mean, look, starting out fast, out front all day, having the confidence to just know she can have a good day, I think is a few things that stick out.
I mean, what really stuck out to me over the past 2 years at Western States and again today was Katie's absolute consummate pro. Like every detail of her life is centered around being a professional trail runner and a professional athlete and an absolute winner, a champion. Yeah. I mean, if you were to go to an AI engine and say, designate me a champion trail runner, it would literally be Katie Schide.
ChatGPT, please generate the new course record holder for UTMB, and it would spit out Katie Schide.
It would just literally be Katie Schide. I mean, and she's so meticulous and so judicious with how she uses her time. I mean, I think about, I think there was a pre-race interview she had when she was at Bib Pickup, and they were asking her what she was doing this week, and she just said, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that I have the energy to put into the race and not use a single bit of my energy that people are taking from me. Mm-hmm. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing it, but it's just a sign that she's so in tune also with those minor little details that totally transform her race experience. She had Meredith Terranova, who is her nutrition coach, she was in the cockpit at all of the aid stations. And I think the other thing with Katie, at least from the outside looking in on this race, is just like Kim said, she has she knows her body, mm-hmm. and she knows what it can do physically, but then she also has the confidence that she can fuel it the right way. And that 1-2 punch has been successful for her in every race, I think, in the last 2 years.
The thing that's remarkable to me is how fearless she is and how she ran last night. I saw Alexi Berg up at Notre Dame de la Gorge, the photographer, and he was like, it's crazy. Katie was in front of Germo coming into Saint-Gervais. Unbelievable. Absolutely fearless, running with the best in the world, including her partner Germo, who was a third place finisher in the men's race last year on 19-hour pace probably at that point. And then at Notre Dame de la Gorge, she was in close to the men's top 10 at that point. Yeah. She obviously finished in 13th overall. But, of course you could view that strategy as reckless and dangerous, but she follows through. And I have a couple cool things to point out here. I was texting with Liam, Aid Station Fireball, just sort of, we were like, is this the first time anybody's broken a Courtney Dauwalter course record? And we think that it is. The first time ever that one of Courtney Dauwalter's times has been broken by somebody else. It shows that Katie Schide is in this category, right? And I should say, actually, we saw Courtney in Champs-Élysées, and there were 1 million fans coming up for selfies, and somebody asked her, oh, she's under your record. What do you think about it? And I cringed. I was like, oh my God. And she responded, of course, perfectly, like, oh, it's awesome. I hope she smashes it, right? But I think, we can be honest, Courtney occupies the center of gravity in the sport. Katie is a phenomenal athlete, but sometimes Courtney's shadow might extend. But I think, Katie is absolutely in the categories with the Courtneys and the Killians and the Jims. These are our heroes in the sport. And Katie now, I'll just read off. So Courtney holds Western States, Diagonal des Fous, Hard Rock in both directions, Mount Fuji, Trans-Gran Canaria, Madeira, Ultra Trail Cape Town, Moab 240, Tahoe 200, and Bandera. Those are Courtney's course records. Katie Schide just took UTMB from the great Courtney Dauwalter.
One of the biggest 100-milers in the world. And she was within 15 minutes of Courtney's course record at Western States this year. So the only two races that she's actually, race courses she's run on, she hasn't had a chance to get after it at Hard Rock yet.
Yeah.
But she's, I completely agree. I mean, I think Katie and Courtney are in another level. Mm-hmm. But given the day, they might be far closer than people think. I think that's what's being revealed now.
And it's a decent margin to take 20 minutes off the time on a hard day too.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also with Katie, like we're saying, the confidence to go out hard, to do those races. And I'll tell you, she makes it look easy though too. She looks effortless,
You're just waiting
flawless.
for her to really
and that's
fade.
Incredible too.
She's a total metronome. She probably, if she looks back, she revealed at the end of the race, she was hoping to go sub 22. And if she couldn't go sub 22, she wanted to break the record. So her absolute A+ goal was sub 22. I think she ran 22:10.
Yep.
And probably only because it looked like she had a little bit of a hitch in her stride, maybe on that final descent. I don't know whether she had a sort of a knee inflammation or
it's
or
the
something
worst
going
downhill.
on. But,
Yeah.
But she nailed it. I mean, she nailed the day. And, all day long, like you just see, she's a metronome out there.
Yeah. So inspiring. So to close on Katie, another fun thing, going back to her UTMB win in 2022, where she raced off the front in similar style and then faded and then rallied, we'll remember. But she won the race on a not perfect performance. She still won the day. Beginning there, her last 500 milers, a UTMB win in 2022, second place at Western States in 2023. We're running at that point the second fastest time ever. Winning at Diagonal des Fous last fall, a win at Western States, running the second fastest time ever, under 16 hours, of course, in June. And here, a win and course record at UTMB. That is 5 sick 100-milers in a row from Katie Schide.
That is totally
I mean, I know it's
impressive.
not a 100-mile, but her Canyons 100K performance was phenomenal too.
Well,
but that wasn't 100 miles.
I mean, we'll talk about this likely tomorrow in terms of just where Trail Runner of the Year stacks up right now. Nobody's competing with Katie Schide at this point. So let's move off it so that we can keep the show moving. We can just glance past this one. My number 3 thing I wanted to talk about here was just wire-to-wire victories for all the women in the World Finals. Mao Yao, you could consider mostly wire-to-wire. There's a pack early, and then she made her move on the first climb, held it to the finish. Of course, Tony McCann had a lead at the first aid station, held it to the finish. Katie Schide was had 20 minutes at Notre Dame de la Gorge, or 15 minutes at Notre Dame de la Gorge. One ended up winning by 39. So,
I mean, all three of those women buried themselves to execute. I think that's the other thing. Like, Tony, I think this is the longest race Tony's ever done, right? First 100K. And she buried herself. And you saw it in all three races. Like, they were absolutely destroyed at the end of the race. Yeah. And I mean, certainly Tony, you could see it in her final climb up to Flégère. All three of them, the course identical, that final climb. So you can sort of measure each of them. And I think that's a sign that, like, the sport is progressing both on the men's side and on the women's side. And to secure those victories, you've got to go absolutely all out, bell to bell, wire to wire. It's impressive.
It's also just like, it's rare that the rabbit wins the race, right? And I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting theme for all three of the world finals, that the women went wire to wire. A little bit different in the men's races, but fact is that you do have to be in the fight. You do have to, sort of take chances, take risks in order to win at this level. Moving on, speaking of taking risks, insane attrition here this year as we talk about instant reactions from today. Just teeing this up real quick. I was texting with, again, Aid Station Fireball, our good friend Liam Tryon, and he consolidated the list for me. So I'm just going to read the names, and then we'll talk about the implications here. These are the DNFs specifically at UTMB of people who came in designated as elites based on their performance index. On the men's side, Aurélien Dunod-Palaz, Mathieu Blanchard, Christian Meyer, Scotty Hawker, Gregoire Kermer, Jordi Gamito, Seb Krogvig, Ryan Sands, Thibaut Garivier, Tim Tollefson, Jim Walmsley, Grant Barnett, Pau Capel, Shen Jishen, Duo Ji, Danny Zhang, Dmitry Michev, Yun Yang Ku, Matthew Clement, Philip Osserhofer, Ben Demon, Tom Evans, Miguel Arsenio, Germain Granger, Sergio Pereira, Seb Spaler, Jonas Russi, Ionel Manoli, Sage Kennedy, Tom Jolly, Raul Batucci, Gediminas Grinius, and Perry Arl.
Ouch.
Wow. I mean, honestly, that is insane attrition, but it was sort of a normal year. A normal year of attrition, meaning, this race is so stacked. I mean, there are probably 50 guys that could go top 10 and 25 guys go top 5. And this is how the top 5 become top 5 and top 10 become top 10.
But this year was unusual.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a lot.
That is a
when
lot
you
of
guys
the
woke up this morning and looked at the tracker,
I was like, whoa,
what the hell happened?
What?
Most people were probably like, who's Vincent Bouillard?
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, normally you get, there's maybe 5 guys on the guy's side that are favorites. One of them hangs in, like none of them hung in. I mean, there was no one from the podium last year that finished the race.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a term, we call it dropitis. I don't know how much of that was happening out there.
It's contagious, you mean?
Yes. Yeah. Like, they start hearing, oh, so-and-so dropped and I don't know all the reasons. I think there was a variety of stomach issues, going out too hard, blown legs. It just shows, this race is just so hard. And for people to execute, it just shows you have to have strong mind, strong stomach, strong legs.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me read the women here, and then I'll give you my hypothesis, and we can move on. So the women's list of DNFs in the elite category: Anna Lee, Fuzhao Zhang, Amanda Basham, Hillary Allen, Ragna Debatz, Claire Heslop, Ida Sophia Hegman, Helena Faulkner, Eva Maria Sperger, Emily Vaden, Fiona Port, Ohana Mielsea, Stephanie Howe, Annalise Rousset, Emma Stewart, and Fiona Pascal. So unusual amounts of attrition. I think the last time we saw something similar to this was, I think it was 2018, the last time Xavier won the race, which was the colder, rainier year. That was the year that Tim fell, cut his leg, got hellied off the mountain. My sense is that it was warmer or more humid than it felt. I mean, it felt warm, but maybe warmer than it felt for the athletes, to the point where it sent them all into a tailspin. And the other thing that is probably obvious but is worth mentioning is just the fact that every single person is so fit that comes here. Everyone has the dream of the miracle day at UTMB. There are few people, a couple we'll mention in a second, who come in with the idea of, I just want to have a solid one, put myself in contention, take advantage of any mistakes of other athletes, maybe land in the top 10. Those people were rewarded. The people who came in thinking this might be my miracle career-changing moment in the sport. It's just like when the conditions are a little off and you miscalculate your nutrition or your pacing, you don't just fade at UTMB. You implode, you collapse, you completely unravel. And we saw that in both the men's and women's races, but especially in the men's, I felt last night.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the heat. Like, the heat and the humidity here is so unique. And it wasn't, by Western States standard, wasn't a hot day, but the heat and humidity is brutal. I also think, like, there's this dynamic at UTMB that's unlike any other ultra in the world, and that's the first 30K of UTMB. Like, it's so easy, even as an elite, to get lost in the chaos in energy of the start, the first 3 towns, Notre Dame, all of this external noise and stimulation that's detracting you from actually like what your race plan is and game plan is. And then you've got athletes they're used to being in the top 5 or out front. And it's like, I'm 40th deep and I'm getting my ass kicked right now and I'm 10K in. What's going on?
I better speed up.
Yeah, I better speed up. And so,
even though my heart rate's at 200 right now.
So yeah, I think
and Katie Schide's ahead of me.
Yes. Yeah. Like, what the hell's going on? And I think there's, in all of that chaos, the first 30K, it's real easy to make mistakes. And a lot of these people probably did make mistakes, whether it's a slight fueling or an adjustment. And then I think you're right on with the heat. And yeah, it was a big attrition year for what was somewhat benign weather. I mean, it wasn't like, I think it was
probably harder than it felt for us.
Yeah.
Like, it felt warm all week. Like, when the rare opportunity I had to go running, I was sweating my face off.
Yeah.
So when you're pushing
it
at
felt
race
hot and
pace,
humid for sure.
Yeah. I bet it was decent, like pretty nice overnight, but I bet those first 30K were pretty warm. Anyway, it's really interesting because this is a fun anecdote that Addie wanted to introduce in the conversation. So this is an Addie bomb, okay? Shout out Addie Thompson for this as an idea. Really interesting observation from her that the course record fell in the women's race. Vincent ran the 3rd fastest time ever in the men's race. I think on average, the men's top 10 and the women's top 10 won't necessarily be much slower. We'll ask Liam to crunch those numbers for us eventually. Her point was, it's strange to have both those phenomenon, historically fast times and this massive attrition happening simultaneously. In other words, if it was heat related, you would expect to see at least those winning finishing times to likely be slower, like a hot year at Western States, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's also a testament to how deep the fields have become. Like, you can have that level of attrition and still have these people that execute on the day.
And this is definitely a race where if you can perform on these big stages, I mean, this is a lot to show up on that start line and execute. I mean, it'd be like the equivalent to other sports like World Championships, the Olympics. And there's just some people that can manage it all a little bit better and get to that start line ready and focused. I mean, there's a lot of distractions here. And I like you're saying, I think like the fitness is insanely high. You walk around this town and you're like, everyone's just so insanely fit.
All right. Well, incredible stuff. And yeah, shout out to everybody who didn't make it, right? It's heartbreaking for so many of these guys.
Sure.
Many of them are our friends and people who we were personally rooting for, who put their entire life into this. So, and everybody's got their own reasons, so no judgment at all. But hope everybody's doing okay. And yeah, shout out to both those who made the finish, but those who didn't quite make it. The whole women's top 10 is through here. So let's just do a quick recap. I'll go deeper on this stuff with Corinne tomorrow. So let's just go through the women's top 10 as our instant reactions. I think it's worth mentioning here, starting behind Katie, Ruth Croft. Awesome run from her, like tactical, felt like very intentional the way she approached it, didn't chase Katie, knowing that Katie was her number one rival. And I wonder, after she has time to think about it, how she might think about it differently, maybe trying to maintain a little bit closer contact, because I went back and looked at the splits. She was 70 minutes back when I saw her at Champex-Lac, and she finished 39 minutes back at the end. So she made up 31 minutes in the final 50K. Of course, Katie knew she had a huge gap, so who knows how that plays into her psychology and her strategy. But interesting, Ruth was making up time. She finished in 22:48, which I think is the fourth fastest time ever, the third fastest time on the current course. The current third fastest time, I believe, is Rory Bozio's from way back in 2013. So historically fast time from Ruth Croft also, and a beautiful execution.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say Ruth executed a perfect race. A perfect race. And, all day, no one was really focused on Ruth. All day. Everyone was focused on Katie. Everyone was focused on Marianne Hogan, on Blondine. Like, that was where all the focus was. And we saw Ruth at Notre Dame last night. We were sort of surprised. Like,
me too.
Ruth was like, back in there, and we're like, how's it going? She's like, it's going great. I'm like, and I'm sort of thinking.
I said the same thing lower on the hill. I was like, yeah, Ruth, go. She's like, hey, Debo. I was like, oh, thank God. Because I've been looking at my watch for 15 minutes wondering where you were.
Yeah, and you're sort of like, I was like, do we give her the split? Because, Katie's way out in front. But she wasn't stressed at all. And she just, again, like, that's the perfect execution of how you'd want to race. Yeah. Obviously, she probably would have loved to have been one step further. But, to your point, I think even if you look at your splits, she closed that gap even from Triant, because from Triant, it was also still about 70 minutes.
Whoa.
So she really closed down.
Yeah,
I think Ruth probably had the strongest finish. If we look at the splits between Triant to the finish, she had the fastest splits.
But think about it. She was still in third and chasing down Marianne. I saw Ruth in Valenciennes, and she was on a mission Marianne was still in second.
Really good point, Kim.
So she was on a mission. She was still from Valenciennes to the end was 12 minutes, I think, behind Marianne.
Wow. And the
don't
finishing
quote
gap
me.
then, hang tight for me, the finishing gap was 23. So Marianne must have really slowed down, but that means that she made up 30 minutes on Marianne.
Hey, but Marianne, a great race. I mean, she improved her time.
Podium.
Yeah, second podium, and also improved her time significantly over an hour. I don't know exactly what it is.
I'll look that up, and we can talk about it tomorrow. But
but
what a podium! Katie,
amazing,
Ruth,
amazing,
Marianne. And I mean, that's an incredible podium. And honestly, so different from the men's podium. That's an really unsurprising podium.
Yeah.
In if you really think about it.
And do we have the top 10 have finished now?
Yes, I do. So
the spread last year was 4 hours and 10 minutes, first to 10th.
Yep.
How are we doing this year?
It was 3 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. I mean,
Super
women
tight.
Constantly making up better times in the top 10.
Yeah. All right. So let me just bang through the rest of the top 10. We can add any final comments. And again, we'll go deeper on this tomorrow. So behind Marianne Hogan, who finished third, it was Chen Lin, who redeems herself from the Western States drop, finishing fourth in 24:16, also a sick fast time. Then Blandine Lahirondelle, former world champion, in fifth. She ran 24:35. Emily Hawgood brings home sixth, 24:58. Sabrina Stanley, 25:32. Claudia Tremps, 25:39 in eighth. Martina Valmasoy, 25:42 in ninth. And Lucy Bartholomew, I think her second consecutive 10th place finish.
Yeah.
25:55. So
what an awesome top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, every one of those athletes are incredible. I mean, one of the most noteworthy, I think, Lin Chen, I mean, she had to be carried off the course at Western States from blisters. She was unable to walk. So that's awesome redemption. Blandine apparently passed out in Valorsine, like literally passed out. And, that was so. These gals were racing hard. Emily Hawgood actually had a really good execution race.
That was my stone cold lock for the weekend. 100% Emily Hawgood finishes in the top 10, no doubt about it. Here's a good thing I just am looking at now. In the top 10 for the women, 9 countries represented.
Ooh,
the
that's
only
fun.
country that doubles is the U.S., Katie Schide and Sabrina Stanley. So here, let's go through it. USA, New Zealand, Canada, China, France, Zimbabwe, Spain, Italy, Australia.
How fun is that?
How sick is that?
That is incredible.
UTMB. Okay, let's move on to the men. Again, we're going to go a little bit deeper on this stuff tomorrow. Again, we already started with Vincent. I think I'm going to bang through some of these. There's 3 things I want to talk about quickly on the men, and then we'll go deeper tomorrow. The things I wanted to talk about. So first, behind Vincent was Baptiste Chesang, this is second year in a row finishing in the top 10. Behind him was Joaquin Lopez from Ecuador. And I believe I'm correct in saying this is the first ever podium finish by a Latin American athlete at UTMB. Wow. So shout out to Joaquin Lopez, who finished in 20 hours, 26 minutes. Also very, very fast. Behind Joaquin was Hannes Naumburger, who finished in 20:31. Behind him was Ludovic Pomeray, his 4th top 5 finish at 49 years old, 5 weeks after breaking the course record at Hard Rock, and 20 years after his first start at UTMB.
He's got to be one of the greatest stories of the race.
He's my favorite athlete of all time.
What are some of the amazing stats? First of all, he broke away out of the start, so he was first at mile 1. He was 79 top of Col de Vosa, and he ends up here in
fifth.
His 4th top 5 at UTMB.
If he's not every ultra runner,
including a victory, we have to remind everybody.
If he's not every ultra runner's inspiration, I don't know who is. I mean, he's the epitome of longevity. We love him.
Right. Okay, so here's a good thing too. In his 4 finishes at UTMB, this was his fastest. At 49, including the year he won.
No way.
He ran more than an hour faster than the year he won today.
That is
it's incredible.
Here's another one. He was 49th place at the top of Col de Vosa, 18th place in Courmayeur, 5th place at the finish.
Wow.
So one of those athletes, like I said, who came into it, obviously he had the glow and satisfaction of Hard Rock. And he as we did our pre-race interview, I was like, can you win this race, man? If you run 21 hours at Hard Rock, you can run 19 hours at UTMB. And he was like, oh no, just take it easy, run my pace, just have a good day. And look what happens when you just do that, right? You run through the entire field at 49 years old and you get your 4th top 5 finish. Unreal.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. I think there was one year where he also was top of Col de Vos in 50th, and he won.
He's done it multiple times.
And he won.
He was 40th or 50th at Les Chapeaux the year he won.
Really? At Les Chapeaux, even more impressive. Yeah, and so, I mean, from my perspective, that's perfect execution. That's a sign that, he didn't let any of that first 30 or 50K for the competition get into his head. And that's what makes him a masterclass, Jedi. Yeah. And, he executed perfectly. I mean, he's definitely an inspiration. Anyone that's, we were talking to Nick Handel, who's, is one of our top Americans in OCC, and he's just going, man, how can I look at this sport and not be fired up when a 49-year-old is just slaying top 10 the way Ludo is?
It's so awesome. And he's such a fun guy, too. It's just appreciate his spirit, the way he holds himself. And, going through aid stations, you can tell just people love him. At Champex-Lac, there was a parade behind him, people holding big cardboard cutouts of his head with flags from his sponsors, playing the drums and stuff. It's just trail culture at its finest. So shout out to Ludo on just another master class. In sixth place, we'll just glance over him. Arthur Joyeux Bouillon, he was our early race leader. I think this might be his third year in a row in the top 10. I'll double check on that and confirm tomorrow, but he ran 21:12. Really solid day, especially being hot off the front, held on, solid sixth place, sort of faded a bit. He probably will go back to the drawing board on race execution, but he's close. Like, he's the type of athlete who we could see on a future podium. The person I wanted to spend a minute on is Cody Lind in seventh place, who we mentioned already. But like I just said with Ludo, I'm going to give the same placings at the same locations to illustrate his race execution. Cody Lind was 63rd at the top of Col de Vosa, 30th in Courmayeur, 7th at the finish line.
I mean, perfect execution. I think, Cody, Ruth, and Ludo are just the model examples of running a perfectly executed race. Mm-hmm. And you might say, hey, they didn't win. Like, the only other perfectly executed race was, Katie, and that's just fearlessness, confidence, courage in execution. But, very few people can do that. But Cody's execution, it was awesome. We saw Cody on the climb. We climbed up out of Triant on that steep climb up and over to Valorcy, and we saw Cody right as he had moved into ninth. He was in 12th at the bottom of that climb, and he was in ninth at the top. And it's like, you're going to be a top 10 Western State or a top 10 UTMB finisher. And he was so fired up.
He was glowing. He was so happy.
I said to him at the finish, I said, there's not many people who can say they've been top 10 at both Western States and UTMB. Like, exactly. It's an elite group of people.
Exactly.
And he put it together. Like, what a great example for others to follow. Cody just, heart of gold, loves the sport, multi-generationally.
Well, and probably someone who wanted to be in it, but knew, like, I'm not going to go out hard, but I want to test myself, but I'm not going to put my nose in it.
It was very reminiscent of the year he finished fourth at Western States, where he was sort of the surprise of the day, just kind of tactical, methodical, waited for other people to make mistakes, minimize his own, and look where you end up. Great lesson. So rounding out the men's top 10, in 8th was Manuel and Guido Bayo from Spain. 9th was Gautier Boncar from France. 10th was Yannick Noel. So doing the same thing to round us out on the men here. 6 Frenchmen in the top 10 again.
Wow. I mean, it was funny. On the live broadcast, Scott Jurek was talking about UTMB is a global event, but in its core, it's a French event. We're in France. The race starts in France, ends in France. All the races that start in other countries end in France. Like, it's a French race. And so this is like home turf for the French. And, unlike the women, which were 9 nationalities on top 10, 6 Frenchmen in the top 10 is impressive. And, we talk about it. I think one of the hardest things still for Americans, and Jim proved it last year by living in France to win the race as the first American male. It's hard to train in other parts of the world and come up here and execute. Yeah. For all the reasons you were just talking about, the heat, the humidity, the uniqueness and steepness of the climbs and the descents, it's a totally different game.
Yeah. So it's reminiscent of, I think it was 2021 when Francois won the race, when the top 5 male finishers were French. So anyway, the other countries represented, of course, Ecuador. That's an awesome one to see up there. Germany with Hannes Namberger, the U.S. with Cody Lind, and Spain with Manuel Aguito. So anyway, we'll go deeper on those results tomorrow. Let's just touch on CCC for a second and then move on, because we took yesterday off from doing shows, and I'm sure, everybody's just loving UTMB to the point where maybe they've already forgotten about some of the astonishing things that happened at CCC yesterday. Starting with the 2 champions quickly, Hayden Hawks, just an absolute masterclass, using no poles, chatty Cathy, confident all day.
Super happy, smiley.
Yeah. And I just wanted to put it in context with his season, because we'll remember he came back from surgery, won in spectacular fashion at Black Canyon, finished third at Western States, but ran 14:24. And now he did a little tune-up race in between in Austria, 50K in Austria, which he won, and now bringing home another huge victory at CCC. He's an early front runner for Trail Runner of the Year.
I mean, Hayden Hawks is the absolute consummate competitor. He loves to race. He loves to compete. He loves it when he's on a start line with the other best runners in the world. And you know, with Hayden, like, he squeezes every bit out of his body and mind to deliver. And then if you talk to Hayden, he's just the nicest guy. Mm-hmm. Like, he's just such a nice guy. He's just such a, I don't want to say humble, because he's totally confident. And
not necessarily humble, but in a great way.
But in a great way.
We were talking about this. Ryan and I were talking about this, about, like, you know, because we posted a clip of him being like, I know I'm one of the best in the world, if not the best. But he says it in such a way to where you're like, I love you, man. Like
Exactly.
That doesn't piss me off for some reason.
It is. And I love it. You know, he's all in on the sport, the lifestyle. He travels around, trains in different areas. He always has great other ultra running friends wherever he travels and trains. We all love following the bromance of him and Danny Jones, racing, traveling, training.
Who finished fourth
Who was fourth
Yeah.
at CCC. But of course, you know, Hayden, he came over here, he trained, you know, he's committed, you know, he comes with his family. It's awesome.
He's just so freaking good. When he's on, it's just
I agree.
when he's
and
on.
after his knee injury last year, and I'm not sure I'm going to have the quote correct, but you're going to mention Adam Peterman was third. Mm-hmm. And in Hayden's finish line interview, he says, we're back, like referring to him and Adam with both of their injuries from last year. Or no, it was even better. It's we're back, baby.
We're back, baby.
So like
the
referring to
HOKA
him
boys.
and Adam having injuries. I mean, we know this sport is hard. It's tough. And if you have an injury and, you know, to get yourself back and to be on a podium at a UTMB race here at CCC is amazing.
Yeah. So cool. So in between Hayden and Adam Peterman was this young kid, Peter Frano from Slovakia. And as I understand it, Hayden and Peter are actually buddies, and they've done some training together also. Hayden's coming in for a post-race interview tomorrow, so we'll talk more about that with him. Before we talk about the women really quick, let's just close the loop on the men. We're not going to go through the full top 10. Maybe we'll do that more tomorrow. The golden tickets. You know, this is an important thing that sometimes gets overshadowed or lost in the hype of UTMB, but CCC is a golden ticket race, a super golden ticket race. So we had 6 golden tickets proposed to athletes. We'll determine which all have been accepted. I'll check back on, you may remember exactly what Craig said. I know Adam Peterman came here
three on the men's side, 3 on the women's side, right? And so we know that on the men's side, because Hayden and Danny Jones are in, it'll actually roll to 5th. It's 2nd, 3rd, and 5th that will be offered. And if one of those 3 doesn't take it, it will roll to 6th. We know Peterman was fired up. He actually came here to earn his golden ticket, and I love the fact that he earned it here. It's the very first golden ticket of the series, the cycle. He can rest easy now and go straight into Western States mode, and he can come away from this race with massive confidence because he had a great race out there.
It's so good for him, and it's a scary proposition. And Hayden Hawks was in here the other day, and he made it clear, I'm going back to Western States next year. So now Hayden, Dan Jones, and Adam Peterman are all heads down to Western States 10 months from now. So maybe tomorrow we'll do our way too early predictions for both Western States and UTMB. Moving to the women real quick, Tony McCann becomes one of the few people who has victories at 2 of the World Finals after her victory at OCC last year. She goes wire to wire, the great South African who lives here in France, finishing under 12 hours, 11:57 in her 100K debut. She was proposed a golden ticket. She accepted on the spot, though, is going to be thinking about it. So they've got some time to make that determination, but was presented with a golden ticket at the awards ceremony. And then, Kim, it sounds like you have some color on Martina Milnarczyk, who finished second, Polish athlete, who I had never heard of before.
Yeah, we weren't that familiar, and we sort of dug around a little bit. First of all, we learned she's was a ballerina, so she does have a beautiful
it's like Drew
running
Holman
stride.
was a Frisbee golf player or whatever, ultimate Frisbee player.
And when I looked, she was a top finisher in the World Championships last year. So I think, performs well on these big stages, if I have it correct.
Yeah, I'll look it up. Maybe we'll go a little bit deeper on her tomorrow. And it sounds like she's thinking about her Western States.
Yeah, I think some of these athletes, to your point, didn't realize that this like top three earned them a golden ticket, and so when presented with the ticket, they were shocked with both excitement and needed a little bit of time to digest it. And I think all of the athletes that are, it would be amazing if Tony wants to stretch it out and see what she can do at 100 miles. She'd be an amazing addition to Western States. Martina would be an amazing addition to Western States. She did have a really, really great day out there executing. At one point, I sort of thought, because Tony was in difficulty, I didn't feel like Tony made it look easy all day, and it felt like Martina had one up on her a few times, but Tony grounded out and held her off. But they'd both be great in Western States.
Yeah.
And then who was third?
It was Rosanna Buschauer, German, who was also really solid all day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Quickly, Tony McCann, man, she's on the cusp of being the next generation's Katie Schide, Courtney Dauwalter.
For sure.
Yeah, and
for sure.
everybody loves her. She's coming in for a post-race interview tomorrow.
Great.
Too. So shout out to Tony. Before we close down, I just wanted to give a shout out to Heather Jackson. Really surprised me. Fifth place.
That's amazing.
Like, think about that. Finishing on the podium of an Ironman World Championship, finishing in the final sprint pack at Unbound Gravel 200 miler, finishing in the top 10 at Western States, finishing fifth at CCC. Like, there is no more versatile endurance athlete in the world than Heather
love
Jackson.
it. And I know,
especially on a mountain course.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, she'll say like, the technical trails are probably what's more of a challenge for her. And this isn't all super easy. So she's worked on it, and you got to give it to her. I agree. I love it. She's
really surprising to me. She was 20th at OCC last year.
She's got a great attitude. What would be an interesting stat, maybe you'll have this for tomorrow, is how many of the men's and women's top 10 from Western States came and ran either OCC, CCC, or UTMB and executed top 10. And I think it's a pretty large percentage. There's only a few. Esther Shilog was 13th in UTMB, I think, where she was tracking at 13th. But you had Katie, you had Emily Hawgood. On the UTMB side, you had Hayden and Danny Jones. On the CCC side, you had Heather Jackson on the CCC side.
And then on the other side, you'd have like Rod Farvard, Caleb Olson finishing outside the top 10, but still having solid days.
Yep.
I'm sure, Jim dropped. I'm sure we'll do a deeper.
Yeah, there's a few, but that would be an interesting
Yeah.
stat just to tie together, like how hard is that double?
Yeah.
And, I think maybe the reveal is there isn't a correlation. Like some people executed big time and some just didn't. But I mean, Hayden executed big time. And on the double.
John Ray had a good one.
Yeah, John Ray and Katie executed well. Danny Jones, I mean, fourth in that field he executed big time. Yeah, so that'd be interesting to.
Thanks for the prompt, Toph. I'm going to write that down for tomorrow's show. What a freaking week! Any other closing instant reactions for our audience before we shut it down for the night?
I know you mentioned it earlier. I also saw Courtney out there, and she really was fantastic with the fans, doing photos. She was so genuine, with people and all. So it was great to see her out supporting the race, supporting athletes, and yeah, I thought that was pretty cool too.
Really is. Yeah. Toph, any closing comments?
I mean, it's just cool. It's the biggest week of the year. I mean, I sort of make the analogy that UTMB week is like wrapping up the Tour de France, Burning Man, and the largest industry trade show in the world into 1 week, one festival week. And I need to go home and get some serious sleep after this week because it was so much fun. It's just so great to actually, spend time with the community, spend time building relationships, getting out of social media, or when you're posting on social media, it's positive, it's unifying, and it's refreshing. I mean, when you share trail time, you share meals with people, you share conversations in the streets. It's bonding, it's cool, and it just makes the world a little bit smaller for all of us and gives you renewed hope in humanity.
So good. What a great closing thought. Ryan reminded me that next year it might be practical for me to sign up for CCC. So breaking news. I need everybody in our audience to hold my lazy ass accountable for the next 12 months.
Hannah, get the training program going.
Could you please start breaking down the training towards CCC? It makes sense because we don't do a show on Friday, so we can get all the shows in early in the week.
That's your taper.
These guys go out and keep the world entertained with content from the races while I'm out there finally enjoying a little run. And then we come back and we do our instant reaction shows and we close the week out.
I love this idea.
What do you guys think?
And you already have your stones. You're already in.
And I already have finishes at 3 of the classics, TDS, OCC, UTMB. So I need that CCC finish to round out the quadfecta.
There you go.
And then I'll transition my focus to ETC and MCC.
PTL.
PTL. Okay. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming in. What a great conversation and what a great way to just process these last few amazing days. To our audience, make sure you subscribe to the channel, please. It would make us very happy and grateful if you would do so. Tomorrow we'll be back with our final wrap-up show, anything that we missed from race week. What an awesome week it's been. Big thanks to HOKA for helping us bring this energy to everybody's living room, wherever you're following along. For Kim Gaylord, Topher Gaylord, I'm Debo. We'll see you tomorrow.